Every time we talk about this character, I dig myself a deeper hole.
You really do, because you're like, yeah, I relate to that. I relate to Mr. Darcy so much.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
No, he's not.
He means well. Hello and welcome to Steam Powered Movies, the movie podcast hosted by Mike and Dana. Hi, I'm Mike.
And hello, I'm Dana. That's the full cast. We're all here.
The entire cast is here. We watched a steampunk movie?
Oh,
Question mark?
I can't wait to get into this. I'm so excited.
Normally, that's our thing.
I feel like we should warn some people of some stuff, though.
Okay, what are the warnings?
Okay, first of all, why don't you first tell them what we watched?
Oh, right. We watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies from the year 2016.
Yes, I'm so excited. Okay, here's what we need
It's
to
what
warn.
it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that I should warn everyone who is listening.
Okay.
This is going to get really nerdy. It's going to get really deep because,
I feel like I needed that warning.
yeah, well,
Okay.
you agreed to this.
Did I?
You did.
Okay. Technically, yes.
So Pride and Prejudice is my favorite book.
Okay.
I've read it numerous times.
Mhm.
I have seen the 2005 film many, many times.
The Keira Knightley and other people.
Matthew McFadden
Yeah, him. Yep.
and Rosamund Pike, I believe.
It's ringing a bell.
Yeah.
I saw it once.
Dame Judi Dench.
Yeah.
It's got
a film.
a star-studded cast.
It's all right. I saw it.
Don't do that. You're trying to wind me up. You're doing this on purpose.
Would I do that?
You absolutely would. So, okay. So, warning number the 1, huge Pride and Prejudice fan.
Number the 1. Yep.
Warning number the 2, have seen that 2005 version many times. I've seen the BBC version as well. Not my favorite.
Okay.
But as a connoisseur of much Pride and Prejudice content, I've read several adaptations, all sorts of stuff. I have a lot of reference bases.
I'm sure you do.
So this is going to get very nerdy. It's going to get very passionate. Strap in, folks.
Okay. I might have to keep you under control here.
No,
if
absolutely
I
not. There will be none of that.
Listeners, I will do my best to shield you.
I refuse.
Much like Miss Bennet does at first.
Are we talking?
She refuses.
Oh, well, she says a man wouldn't, the right man wouldn't ask me to lay down my sword for a ring.
Well, yeah, but then when he actually proposes, she says no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We're going to get, oh man.
Well, why not?
Were you even listening?
I thought so.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I got it wrong right away, apparently.
Oh boy. Wow. Like one of the most famous literary speeches in all of history, and you didn't get it.
Did I not? What did I not get?
He opens by saying, against my better judgment, he opens by saying, I have fought to repress my feelings, but they will not be repressed. She is of inferior birth, Mike. Her family is an embarrassment. But actually, would you marry me anyway?
Yeah, it was a proposal. And she said no, because it was bad.
Well, she said no because he connived to break up Jane and Bingley.
I mean, inadvertently, he didn't know it was
No, he
gonna...
knew exactly what he was doing.
He
said yes, he did. She said deny it, and he said, I won't deny it.
But he didn't know what he was doing.
He absolutely knew what he was doing.
That was the whole letter at the end explaining himself.
No, he said that he didn't believe that Jane's feelings were as strong for Mr. Bingley as Mr. Bingley's were for her. And as Lizzie very, very emphatically says, she is shy. And in the original text, she says, she barely reveals her true feelings to me.
Yeah, and in this one, she did it with violence.
What, Lizzie or?
Yeah, Lizzie. She.
That's kind of the whole thing of this movie, though.
She gave her
Everything
opinion
is just
with some violence.
taken to 11.
Yeah, this is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
And when you got zombies, you got to know how to fight them.
A world in which, from the very beginning, we are not introduced. There is no explanation or lore given. It's just So zombies are a thing.
Yeah, I love it.
I actually really liked that.
Yeah.
I didn't like during the opening credit scene that followed that where they gave the lore in the background. I was like, why'd you do this? You ruined it.
Like, from a literary standpoint, I actually really like it because they tell us like what the Cascade Point was.
Yeah, I guess. But like it felt incongruous with the opening, like the cold open of like, you're just in this world now. You got to figure it out. I prefer that kind of story where you're just thrown in the middle and have to figure out the lore as you go instead of someone sitting down and telling you all at once. But
I know.
that's just my preference.
You're not a huge fan of the info dumping, basically.
Yes.
Which is what this does, which is what a lot of things do.
But then it also is like, yeah, info dump. Here's some zombie fights.
Yes.
And then here's some Pride and Prejudice. And then here's some zombie fights.
Yeah.
I've summarized the entire movie for you folks.
Yes.
You don't need to watch it.
No. Allow me to also say, this is based on Pride and Prejudice, of course, but also the book Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Seth Grahame-Smith. And that is sort of an amazing book, which I've also read, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I also recommend the book Pride by E.B. Zaboy. I recommend the book Heartstone by Kirsten D. White. I also recommend, what's the other one that I'm thinking of?
I don't know what it is you're thinking of.
It's another good Pride and Prejudice
I'm sure it is. If you're looking for a similar film to this one, I recommend Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Which we are going to do for this podcast.
It has very similar vibes. It's like
Seth Grahame-Smith may have written that book too, but I don't remember.
Like, we're going to set this in this historical, period appropriate setting. And then we're just going to inject this crazy stuff.
Some undead.
Yeah, some undead of some sort.
Yeah.
And people are fighting it, and it's just part of the world.
Okay.
We don't send in the army to protect the countryside. We send our daughters to China or Japan to study the East Asian arts to be able to fight off the zombie hordes. That's what we do.
I'm going to pick you up on a couple things there.
Okay.
One, they do have an army because we meet the militia. That's where Wickham is stationed.
Right.
But also, the era, like the rich went to Japan and the wise went to China.
Sure.
Which I kind of love that there's this like kind of thought process happening as to which is better. Like, does Japan produce better fighters or does China?
I thought that whole part was kind of, I don't know, kind of cringe, actually.
I think it fits.
I don't know. For me, it just felt like the European fixation on like East Asia and like it's some sort of mystical and powerful, that they're like magical beings that have solved the art of fighting and stuff, and it's like, no, not really. You just get swords and stab them. I don't know. It felt a little weird and cringe to me.
I mean,
but appropriately cringe to describe Europeans and English people.
Yes, there was definitely that attitude in that era.
Instead of importing spices, they're importing fighting styles.
Also undead, because they said like the undead plague came from the colonies and whatnot.
Yeah, of course it did. Blame the colonies. Blame the French.
Well, they said blame the French, which is so on point.
So English. Yeah, it's a very period appropriate English film. They blame the French for all the bad things, and they're like, ooh, East Asia, fancy.
I mean, and okay, so I want to get into a couple of facts before I get into this. We came in so hot on this. So hot.
I mean, why would we not? The movie does.
Yeah, and I love it for that. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, the time periods. So Queen Victoria reigned from 1837 to 1901.
Mm-hmm.
Pride and Prejudice was published in 1813. So
okay,
the setting of Pride and Prejudice is not exactly in the Victorian era. We're a little bit before
King George, I believe, at the
So,
opening.
That was kind of like
just previous to this, I guess.
Yeah, because like the zombie outbreak happened like 100 years before this.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was referring to, they didn't say King George. I don't think they said King George III, but it was King George III who was like the Mad King George, who probably suffered from porphyria or some other mental illness.
No, it was the zombies that drove him crazy, Dana. Of course, this is a historical documentary.
Yeah. Also another book I recommend would be Dread Nation by Justine Ireland. It's not a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it is a zombie apocalypse we all learn to fight, kind of like we're all coping kind of book. Anyway, so like I said, this is not precisely Victorian era, but it's close. And I will say, kind of in the steampunk world, Regency and steampunk kind of like, they're kind of like good friends. Like we're holding hands as we like make our way through the world and stuff. Because, you know, we've got all of the manners, the propriety, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And like the Gothic movement is influencing both. Like it's all kind of tangled up together.
Yeah. So when we watch films for this podcast, I take notes, right?
Yes. Okay.
And I have a section of my notes for things that are steampunk.
Okay.
You know, things that make this film steampunk.
Okay.
You know, why we're talking about it, why we're covering it on this podcast that's about steampunk movies. The list of things on my list is in the studio logo, right before the movie starts, there's a steam train. End of notes.
End of notes?
Yeah,
Okay. And I will admit, there's not a ton of steampunk stuff in here. Like, there's not gadgetry and whatnot. However, although there was a little bit of gadgetry, like those like big death wheels that we see like at the border.
Okay.
Those I could kind of see as like a steampunky thing.
Right. But I wrote that down while we were watching the opening credits and the studio logo, because I had a feeling that might be the most steampunk thing I saw in this entire film.
Yeah. I got some steampunk vibes during like the dressing scene when they're getting ready for the ball at Meriton.
Okay.
Like, you know, we have like the cute little, what are they called? The frilly skirts, not parasols, not pinafores,
I'm not going to help you. Okay.
Petticoats. Like the cute little petticoats, the thigh highs with like the little garters.
Corsets, I know that.
Like now granted their corsets are underneath, which a lot of times in the steampunk world, like we wear our corsets on the outside because fashion.
Aesthetics,
precisely. Yeah. But that whole dressing scene kind of gave me a little bit steampunk vibes. And like, you know, we have the thigh high boots and everything. But yes, beyond that, there's not a lot. That
scene and the scene following that is when I wrote down, what is this movie? Because it was all of this like, oh, a proper lady, you know, is well dressed and attends balls and also is like armed to the teeth to fight the zombies.
Yeah.
Which is just wild. And then there's like a zombie attack at this party they're at.
Yeah.
And the dudes are kind of on the side chilling. The ladies are like, we got this. And all this is happening. And somehow their gloves stay white.
That is something I noticed. There's like no blood spray.
This entire movie, there is no blood.
Yeah.
At least on the people that are fighting.
Yeah.
They're so clean.
Like heads are getting exploded, but no blood spray.
Yeah, it's such a weird mashup of Pride and Prejudice, but also zombies.
And that's basically all the book is as well. Like it's basically the story of Pride and Prejudice. The fun fact, they changed a lot of stuff for this movie, which won't surprise you. Hollywood does this all the time when they adapt a book. They change huge swaths of it, which they did with this film. But in the book, it is basically just Pride and Prejudice, but with, you know, the occasional zombie scene and the occasional like different conversation and whatnot, where it's like, oh yeah, and like, let's talk about our training over in Japan or China or what have you.
Yeah, they mix in some of the what's going on around into the dialogue, into what they're talking about, but it is like scenes of, oh, proper people sitting around at parties and talking and being all, you know, time period appropriate and stuff. And then there's a zombie fight. So
tell me, okay, because we started to get into it, just go ahead and tell me like your overarching thoughts and feelings about this movie.
Overarching thoughts and feelings are that it was crazy. It was baffling, hilarious at moments. I don't know if it was intentional comedy, but I definitely laughed at several parts of this movie, just at the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah.
Just how over the top. And I did like that it kept that consistent tone throughout. At the beginning, it was a little bit jarring. It was like this prim and proper thing, but also the fighting, but it just kept doing it the same way.
Yeah.
And didn't try to like justify itself. It's just like, this is the reality of this film. You're either on board or not. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Guess I'm here.
Right.
Get on.
Like they didn't try to explain too much or justify, like I said. It's just like, this is what's happening. This is this world that we've set up, and it's completely ridiculous. Completely.
Yeah.
But I was was kind of here for it.
I'm so glad to hear that. So,
and I was familiar enough with like the general outline of the story, more so with the characters from the original story, and seeing how they were like ported into this version of it was kind of interesting to see.
Okay, I know you have seen the 2005. How, like, do you remember enough of it to kind of link these two at all, or like do you just not remember enough to really say?
Not really, more than, like I said, just the general interplay between the characters. That, you know, you had Mr. Bingley, who's the eligible bachelor who everyone wants to pair up with, who takes a shine to Elizabeth's sister Jane. Right? See,
You got it. You did it.
I mean, I watched this movie just now, so I'm gonna remember some stuff. And then something about like she meets Darcy and is like, ooh, and then
because Darcy is so rude.
Yeah, I think his character is a little bit different in this, in that he's more in charge in this movie. Oh, but he's shy. In the beginning, it was a little bit off kilter, it felt like, but like towards the middle and end of the movie, his character made more sense within the context of this version of the film.
Okay.
Okay, giant sigh.
All right. The thing you have to understand about Mr. Darcy is that in every version, because his character is written, like, he's just really socially awkward. In the original Pride and Prejudice, he has a whole conversation with Elizabeth how I do not easily make conversation with people with whom I'm not well acquainted. And then Elizabeth delivers such a slam because his aunt earlier had been like, oh, you can't achieve anything without practice, basically. And Elizabeth is like, well, then you should take your aunt's advice and practice.
Right.
So
and I remember that from the original.
Yeah. And like, of course, this iteration is going to be different than the book, is going to be different than the other book, then it's going to be different than the 2005 film. But I do think they really stayed true to him. He's just not a social dude. Like in the 2005 version, he's just so uncomfortable. Like he's just so socially uncomfortable, and he just like is dragged along to this party by Bingley, and he's like, I don't want to be here. Whereas here, he's like, I'm concerned with safety above all else, and that kind of impinges on my social ability.
Yeah, I didn't get as much from this version that he was generally socially awkward, and maybe that's where the disconnect felt for me early on. That he wasn't generally socially awkward. He was just really awkward with Elizabeth, mostly. I mean,
he's just really hyper focused on safety above all else.
Yeah, but like in this version, he has a job and he's good at it.
Yeah,
which kind of makes someone less awkward in a lot of settings because you have a purpose, you have a goal that you're fulfilling. Whereas in the 2005 film version of Darcy, he's kind of just hanging out places, doesn't have anything to do, so he is more awkward.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at, that this Darcy is more in charge, so he feels more competent and less awkward when he's like doing stuff because he has stuff to do.
So do you not think that there's something to the fact that like he's, again, solely focused on safety, and therefore he's kind of just, well, I might have to kill my best friend.
I mean, that just seemed very practical.
Wow. Okay.
He's very practical.
I'm going to share something deeply personal with the listeners.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
I was anticipating this from the start, so go ahead.
Okay, listeners, there's something you need to know, and it's adorable. I refer to Mike as my Mr. Darcy, and this admission on his part has only solidified that even further.
Every time we talk about this character, I dig myself a deeper hole.
You really do, because you're like, yeah, I relate to that. I relate to Mr. Darcy so much.
Yeah. And he had a good reason for the things that he did that upset Elizabeth. He just needed to have the chance to explain himself and be given a second chance. He's a good guy.
No, he's not. Not at first. That's like kind of the magic.
He means well. He's just not, educated in the social arts.
Okay. I will grant you, this movie doesn't do it nearly as much. In the original, there's a huge issue with the fact that he is hugely privileged and doesn't realize it. And he talks smack about her whole family and like talks about like the inferiority of her birth and whatnot. And she calls him on his crap. And then he actually like looks at his behavior, which is why this is such an eternal book, because all of us just want to see this all the time. We want to see a dude get told off and like get the truth told to them. And then they actually examine their actions and change their ways. We all just want that in life. But in the original book, that happens. Now, granted, again, he's not really so much coming at it from that angle, but he does kind of in that proposal where he is talking about the inferiority of her birth again, which honestly, it's never a good way to open a conversation.
Okay, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but in his defense...
Oh my gosh!
What he says in that proposal is referring to how other people refer to her family and her station as inferior.
He's talking about himself! He has that opinion.
Or how he previously stated... It felt to me like he was trying to say he didn't agree with that opinion and that she was actually great. Okay, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to change the subject. So, the big difference. Okay, this is breaking ground here. The big difference between this film and the 2005 Pride and Prejudice film. Not the zombies.
That's not the big difference?
No, it's not the big difference. No. Okay, the zombies
Say
is
more.
The zombies is the big difference practically. But in terms of telling the interpersonal story, I feel like this movie doesn't have time for subtext. The 2005 film, you have the conversations and the things that happen in the major plot points, but in between, there's all like the subtlety and the subtext and the looks and glances and like the conversations people have are drawn out over several scenes that establish the characters' like thoughts and feelings about each other.
Okay.
It's kind of drawn out, right? And you have to infer. This film, it doesn't have time for subtext. In place of where the subtext would be, it just has zombie fights. That's it.
You're not wrong. I'll grant you that.
That's my main interpretation of this film. Is that they were like, no time for subtlety or reading between the lines or interpreting. We're just going to, in the scenes where they're talking, they're going to say what they're thinking and feeling. And then when they're not doing that, they're going to be punching and stabbing some zombies.
That is an accurate description of this film. You're not wrong. I don't disagree with any of that. So
that was the major difference in storytelling.
Yeah.
They're like, what if instead of, the long dramatic draw out of these interpersonal relationships, we just have them fighting zombies in between, and then we get to the end.
And I mean, for a modern audience, that is very good. I mean, for an audience who loves Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version is awesome. But like, I know a lot of people who have watched that and like for me and gone, okay, I watched that. Job done.
Dana, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you a master of the female arts?
Oh my gosh. I love this scene so much.
Yeah.
Because this is also an iconic scene in the book. Like there's this whole conversation.
I figured it was.
About how women should be viewed and what is an accomplished woman. And like it was one of those times where they actually took a lot of the text. Like a lot of the original text is in there. Obviously, again, we're like mixing in stuff about martial arts and zombies and stuff. Right. But a lot of the text, like, has to be a master of the modern languages, has to like be able to play music, da 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 da. And Elizabeth being like, I'm shocked that you know even one woman who fits all of this description. And are you severe on your own sex? Da 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 da. Like, I love it so much. It's such a good, thoughtful conversation. Because even, 200 plus years ago, Jane Austen was like, yeah, women are held to this insane standard.
Right. I love it. It's ludicrous.
Yeah. There's so much in Jane Austen's books that you could just sort of take out and put in a modern day setting and look, nothing has changed. Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's so good. Her books are so timeless. They're just so good. I
have another question for you.
Yes.
So I didn't remember much about the character of Mr. Wickham from the original.
Okay.
I just, at some point I was like, something's up with that guy. I wrote it down. Something's up with Wickham. I was like, wait, he's too dashing and charming and charismatic. He must be the villain somehow. before it was like revealed, or it was just kind of like, what's going on with him? So how does that compare to his previous portrayals?
I mean, it is very similar. Darcy describes him as
He
having...
leads a zombie uprising in the original?
No! Oh, he didn't even lead a zombie uprising in the Seth... I'm getting so worked up. In Seth Grahame-Smith's book. That was entirely fabricated
Really?
For the movie.
Oh, wow. That is quite a departure.
Oh, yeah. No, in Seth Grahame-Smith's book, he does run away with Lydia, which happens in the original as well.
Okay.
Because he's a scumbag and we hate him. He does not get to sit with us.
Okay.
Yeah, he's terrible. He basically just like tries to elope with all these women, especially like vulnerable women like Georgiana Darcy, who is Darcy's younger sister. When she was like 15, just to get their fortunes, and also like they're going to be like shamed into getting money because he's going about it in a very like disgraceful way.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So all that happens as far as like him running away with Lydia in all the versions, except in Seth Grahame-Smith's book, he gets paralyzed somehow.
Oh.
And Lydia still marries him, but they like move up to like Cornwall or something like that, and he just is paralyzed for the rest of his life.
This is better. Yeah.
I don't
the
know
film version's better.
I don't actually like this version much better. It feels very like
I don't know. It fit with the rest of the film.
It did. You're not wrong. And I should say I wanted to watch this film because I wanted something like just like fun and dumb. Yep. Something that I could just like watch, and it's so silly. And I got that, and it was great. I like this movie. It's just like punch 'em up silliness.
Yeah, indeed.
I again don't know how I feel. I don't love.
I think strategically he made a bad move by telling Elizabeth about his secret church thing.
Oh, I think that was terrible. Although I do think he was trying to maneuver her into helping him to get what he wanted. I think he was always going to betray. I think that was always the plan.
I guess it was one of those classic villain things of underestimating someone. Underestimating like her intelligence and her resolve and her ability to like see things for what they are.
Yeah. I think I dislike it the most because of that dumb little extra scene at the end where like they've just gotten married and then like Wickham is like leading an army of zombies. I'm going to pretend that doesn't exist.
You know what?
Because it really annoys me.
I was waiting for something like that.
I know you kept it running and I was like, oh, he knows something's coming.
I kept the credits running. I was like, I feel like there's more. I feel like there's going to be a button on this somehow. I don't know. I think it kind of fits because that's the whole film. Even the very end. So the letter that Darcy writes. Yeah. That
also a thing in the book.
I believe that. Yeah, I remember that from the original where he explains himself. What he really meant. And it's like so like moving and personal, and it's like, oh, like they're understanding each other now. And then it veers off into the ridiculousness of talking about like the battlefront with the zombies and blowing up bridges and all this stuff. I'm like, that's the movie in an encapsulation.
You're not wrong.
And so why not at the very end, it ends in a moving ceremony with the dreadful Mr. What's his face?
Wickham?
No, the officiant.
Oh, we have to talk about Matt Smith.
Yes.
Okay, but that's Mr. Collins.
Right, Mr. Collins officiating, and then there's a zombie horde. Like, why not cut straight from sincere to ridiculous? That's the whole theme of the film.
You're not wrong. And actually, Seth Grahame-Smith's book as well ends with them fighting zombies. There's only like 2 or 3, but they like profess their love for each other, and they're like, yes, we're totally going to get married. And then like some zombies show up and they're like, let's go, bae. We're going to go fight zombies together.
I mean, they're a power couple for
sure. They are. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Okay. But okay, we're talking about Mr. Collins now.
I have to drink some wine before I do this.
Okay. Well, I found it hilarious to see Matt Smith playing a dreadful bore of a character.
I love it. He's just going for it.
Yeah.
And like Mr. Collins, oh my gosh. He's that person in your life that like, for whatever reason, like you can't shake them. They happen to just like be in your life and you can't do anything about it. And they are so annoying. Oh my, and they don't know it. Like they don't realize how annoying they are.
It's the lack of awareness.
Yes.
And he plays it so well.
He's so good at it.
He plays it so well at being unaware, but doing the most awkward and like loud things
and he's
that
so
don't
like
fit.
Yeah, he's so rude and like, oh my gosh, like the lines where he talks about like he arranges these little delicacies is also from the book. Like
he talks about how great he is, these things.
And then also his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he never shuts up about it.
Yeah.
He's so good. Like, and he's like talking about how she compliments my lightness of foot, and he's like flopping around.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of Doctor Who in the ballroom scene where he's like just whoa.
Yeah.
There's a lot of arm flailing happening in the studio right now, friends. I wish you could see it.
Yeah. Yeah. When this is ever a video podcast, you'll get to enjoy it.
Oh my gosh.
Just wait.
I can't, now that I've seen this particular performance, I can't imagine anyone else in this role. Matt Smith just took it and he consumed it. And he's like, I will make this part mine.
It's wild because everything else I've seen him in, he's like charismatic. And even if he's kind of playing like a bad character, he still has like a coolness or like collectedness. So seeing him at first in this was a little bit like, this is interesting. But then he just did it so well and owned it. I was like, oh, you're making me cringe. Like, but it's a good thing because that's what fits.
Yeah.
You're supposed to do that.
Yeah. The only regret I have is that there just wasn't more of it. Like, he's got a whole like litany of these like little comments in the original text. Like he talks about what excellent boiled potatoes.
Wow.
I'm not joking. To which one of my cousins. And he talks about like the cooking and stuff, but like, oh my gosh. I want Matt Smith as Mr. Collins for 18 more hours in this film.
You know, if you marry him, you have to put down your sword. You can't have any of that, you know.
Yeah. No
pick
swords
up pots
in the
and pans
house.
instead, you know. Go shopping for pots and pans to replace your swords and guns. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Can I share something so sad though?
I suppose you can.
Okay, so in Seth Grahame-Smith's book, Charlotte Lucas marries Mr. Collins, just like in Big Jane Austen's book.
Sure.
And just like in this film and all the other films.
Right.
But in Seth Grahame-Smith's book, Charlotte gets infected by the zombie virus.
Oh.
They try to take care of her for a while, but obviously like it doesn't work. And eventually she gets killed. And then Mr. Collins kills himself.
Whoa.
I know. And it happens so fast in the book. Like that entire thing that I just described happens over like a page and a half. I was sitting in bed when I was reading that and I had to go back because I was like, wait, what? Did I miss something? So I like went back and I was like, this is just like a passing mention in the book that like Lizzie's best friend becomes a zombie, gets killed, and then Mr. Collins commits suicide.
Wow. Do you think that author, when he was writing that, he was like, this Mr. Collins character, he sucks so much. I want to get rid of him and not have to write about him anymore. Like, or did he think that Mr. Collins was not portrayed as unlikable enough in the other versions and he had to make him more unlikable and then kill him off?
I don't know. Because honestly, this is kind of a beef with me because it's handled so swiftly and it's such like a passing thing. Like I understand that death is just like a very normal part in that world, but it happens so fast and it's just like, man, this is the thing that happens. Okay, I'm like, I felt like it was a really empty death.
Yeah.
And again, Charlotte is Elizabeth's best friend in the whole world. So I actually don't really like that in the book at all. Like I think that they kind of all got done dirty in that way.
I'm glad that the film didn't do that.
I am too, actually.
For multiple reasons. One, to keep like with the whimsical tone.
Yeah.
But also it was nice to keep having Mr. Collins around as a punching bag for all of us to dislike to his face. And we don't have to feel bad for it.
No, yeah. And just the double marriage is very cute and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm glad about all of that.
It's so ridiculous.
Delightfully ridiculous.
Delightful, indeed.
Yeah. I want to point out a few more things.
Okay.
So again, I have consumed a lot of Pride and Prejudice media in various forms.
Sure.
And I really think that this film tried to pay a little bit of an homage to a bunch of those. So I don't know if you noticed, because again, I don't know how much you remember from watching the 2005 version.
Some stuff.
Okay. So the opening music of the 2005 version is really iconic. Like you
Okay.
hear this like little piano tune that Mary is playing on the piano forte, I think it is.
Yeah, I remember there's a scene where they're all kind of sitting in a room with a piano. Yeah.
Well, in the opening of the 2005 version, like there's some really interesting camera work happening where the camera is following all of these different family members like through the house, and you're kind of seeing them in like their everyday life. And again, this little like piano tune kind of just like plinking along and whatnot. It's really iconic. And this movie also opened with like a little piano tune. It's obviously not the same because copyright and all that.
Yeah.
But like there's a little piano tune happening as the movie opens on Longbourn, their house.
Okay.
Which I think is a really nice little homage. I don't know if that's actually what it is, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like it's
probably a little reference.
Yeah, I feel like it's paying respect. Also, the BBC version had this like this scene with Colin Firth, who was Darcy in that.
Mm-hmm.
Where he like comes out of a lake and he's like soaking wet and people find it really hot. I don't get it personally. Colin Firth does nothing for me. I'm like, cool, okay, he's wet, get the man a towel. But like
seems appropriate for Darcy though.
Yeah,
good
but
casting.
they did have a couple of like wet shirt scenes in this, like when he's like out in the garden and it's like misty and stuff. It's very much like Matthew McFadden like walking across the mist at the end of the 2005 version. He jumps into a lake another time, which feels like an homage to like the Colin Firth scene,
perhaps,
and whatnot. So I do feel like this movie it pays a lot of respect.
I did kind of think the diving into the lake was kind of not connected to anything else.
Oh, I fully think it's like, hey, remember that other scene? Yeah, this is that.
That makes more sense now. I think you're 100% correct that that's a reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do think that I think that the Seth Grahame-Smith's book, as well as this film, it wants to be like, hey, tip of the hat to those who came before.
Right. And that's cool.
Yeah. No, I like it so much. And finally, this is a little bit bittersweet for me. So Mary, the quiet sister who like wears the glasses and plays piano, I feel like she always
who's reading a book in the corner.
Yeah, she always gets underused. It like even in the original book, I've seen some people have written books just for Mary Bennett because she's kind of the sister that gets overlooked all the time. And her fight scene with Elizabeth is so good where she's just like calmly talking and like going through her katas and whatnot and like just absolutely kicking butt so calmly. And I love her and I want her to have more.
It was pretty fun when they did that with conversations that were also combat, but that didn't need to be.
Yeah.
Like that one where the sisters are all talking and they're, doing their sparring practice in the basement or wherever they were.
It was definitely under the house.
Yeah. Or the scene where Darcy and Elizabeth are arguing and I just wrote down love is war. As they're like physically fighting through the whole thing in that ridiculous way. And then when she wins the physical fight, he like abdicates the vocal argument they're having, which is like nice timing and having both those things go together.
Yeah, the fight is really well done, minus the extremely gross overused trope where like they're like in a physical fight and like a woman like loses whatever is fastening her dress. I hate this trope. It is gross and it needs to stop. But beyond that, I agree. I think it was very well orchestrated. But it's just the reason they had to have it up to like 11 is because nothing will ever compare to the electricity of that same scene in the rain, in the gazebo, in the Keira Knightley version. Like it is palpable. The tension between them in that scene. And again, no one's ever going to be able to pull that off again. So instead they just fight and that totally works.
Yeah. Just a different interpretation.
Yeah. I love it so much. I think it's really good. I love it. This is just a great fun movie. Like it's just silly. It doesn't take itself too seriously.
Definitely not.
And I love it for that.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I can't believe you hadn't seen it. I could have sworn we watched it together.
No, we've watched some other zombie and vampire and crazy period films together, but this is the first for me.
Yeah.
And on that note, it's time for us to rate this film.
Yeah.
We don't rate films based on any, highfalutin critical criteria. We're not professional movie reviewers. We just do a podcast and talk about it. So first we rate it based on how steampunk is this film, Dana. On a scale of 1 to 5 steam engines, how steampunk is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Oh, I do only have to give it like a 2 out of 5 for how steampunk it is. Like it is almost in the right era. And again, like we're all kind of interconnected with some of these similar eras and movements and whatnot.
Yeah.
But as far as gadgetry, it doesn't bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, it's not very steampunk. But
it's fabulous, but it's
we
not very
wanted to
steampunk.
watch this fun movie, so fight us. Anyway.
But did you study in Japan or China?
Oh, haha. Does it matter? I don't know.
That's one of the cold questions in this film, Mike.
It's never answered.
Yeah, I love that.
They needed a showdown between the different schools.
It's
right?
a continuing conversation.
Okay. All right.
Well, they did, because Darcy went to Japan.
Oh. And he lost.
That's right.
Anyway. So then we rate on how much we just enjoyed watching the film, Dana. So for you, on a scale of 1 to 5 gears, how much did you enjoy Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
5 out of 5. I'm giving it. I think this is such a fun film. I think it is a really sweet, honorable interpretation of the original story. Does it have all the charm of Jane Austen's original? No, of course not. But it is great fun.
No, it has zombies, Dana.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't have charm. It has zombies.
It's replaced a lot of the charm with zombies. Most of the charm.
All the subtext with zombies. All the subtlety with zombies. And the full subtlety of the zombie. On that note, I think I have to rate this on how much fun I had. And also just, did it do what it set out to do? And it was exactly what it said on the tin, Dana. It was Pride and Prejudice with zombies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's perfect, so I can't give it 5. I'm going to give it 4.5, though.
Okay.
I think that's a 4.5 film.
That's perfectly respectable.
You get exactly what it tells you you're going to get out of it. And it's fun. So there you go.
Yeah.
Those are our ratings. If you have any feedback or your own rating you want to give us, send us that feedback. You can hit us up on our socials. We are at Steam Powered Movies on Instagram and Threads and Bluesky, at Steam Powered Pod on Twitter. You can go to steampoweredmovies.com for a full list of episodes and more information there as well. There's a link to our Discord that you can get to in the description of this podcast. Hop in there, send us your notes, your feedback, or any suggestions for a future film that we should cover. Something steampunk that we haven't heard of, maybe. Drop a line to us in our DMs or in the Discord. Thank you again for listening. We will see you again next month. Okay, bye!
Bye!